we often forget that they are human just like everybody else. That means they're fallible. What's up, family? Welcome back. As the title says, I wanted to talk about the Bill Cosby documentary by W. Kamau Bell. As someone who grew up similar to Bell in that time period, the 80s and 90s, it was interesting sitting down and watching this documentary. Now, I had heard about it from my mom, family, friends, mentioned that it was something I should take a look at. And I will admit, I wasn't necessarily excited to watch it. Cosby was somebody that I grew up with and idolized. When these allegations first came out prior to the documentary, when it first became a news thing at the time, I remember seeing it and not really giving it much attention because honestly, I guess I didn't want to face the possibility that someone that I admired could actually be a villain. So I came in, and all that to say, I came in with skeptical eyes, wondering what's going to happen. Because I had kind of heard some of the rumors about what D.L. Hughley was saying and what some other people had said about the credibility of the people involved and whether or not it was a smear piece or there's a lot of speculation going on. I just want to say that I was impressed with the way W. Kamau Bell and his team presented the documentary. I didn't feel that they did anything to skew perceptions. I think that the information that was presented very well. Now, getting into the meat and potatoes, as they say. My introduction to Bill Cosby was through my parents. I did not know he was a comedian. I had seen him in some of the black exploitation movies of that time of the 70s, Uptown Saturday Night, Let's Do It Again. And that's where I saw him first and enjoyed his acting abilities. My introduction to Bill Cosby, the comedian, was through his special, I believe it was on HBO, called Bill Cosby Himself. And I remember sitting there watching that special and thinking to myself that a lot of the things that he is saying and commenting on are things that I heard growing up, and I was hearing at the time growing up from my parents, as far as, the rules and guidelines and the little quips that were snappy. And I remember thinking to myself, this guy really, represents my parents, and growing up at that time and feeling like I could relate to everything he was saying because I was blessed to have both my parents in the house. They both had good jobs and took care of us and, made sure that we got everything that we needed and some of what we wanted. So when the Cosby Show came on and became a thing, I was on board. As Kamau, mentioned, it was like, that was a mirror of some of our families. And you felt like some of the shows reflected situations that maybe you had gone through with your parents or with your siblings. It connected, it resonated very well. And knowing all that, growing up and then moving on with your life and Cosby falls off the map, I hadn't heard a lot of the later Cosby activity where he was making the speeches about pull your pants up and giving people a hard time. The next time I think I heard any references to Cosby were by comedians like Eddie Murphy, which he referenced in there where Bill called him on the phone and told him to stop cussing. So those one-offs here or there is where I heard about Cosby until this thing came up with him in the allegation. I wasn't following the news like that to really understand what was going on with him and seeing him maintain an active role. I saw some commercials about his shows, them trying to give him other stuff, but the Fat Alberts, the Picture Page, All Electric Company, that's where I knew him from. So it was interesting when these allegations came out that he was being accused. Now, I do remember initially thinking, this is a bunch of bullshit. People are just trying to jump on and start some trouble. And yeah, I had heard the conspiracy theory about him looking to buy NBC, and then potentially this was the reason why all this stuff was happening. And at the time, I can honestly say that I kind of like bought into that, like, well, it's possible because, this is Bill Cosby we're talking about. Why would he have done anything like this? So in my mind, I still didn't even see him as being almost human. So that's the first thing. The first mistake is not seeing him as a real person. As I said, when the allegations started coming up and you start seeing more of it in the news, I was like, holy shit, this is really ballooning into something bigger than what it looked like it could be. You got 35 plus women saying the same thing. I mean, this just doesn't make any sense that it couldn't be true. So then I had to grasp the fact that if this is true, what does that mean for me as someone who grew up listening to this man and taking to heart a lot of what he said on the show, different programs, all the education that he was giving? Did that now negate what the message is that he gave out? I, over time, learned how to separate the man from the message and took the words to heart and still tried to live my life correctly as best as I could, but also recognizing that this guy has done some things that are quite heinous. I'm not going to get into the whole back and forth about the him being acquitted versus the technicality on the legal side. I mean, it doesn't negate what was said in the deposition. It doesn't negate what happened to these women. It just means that the law happened to work in his favor. Overall, it was fascinating to watch, but at the same time, it was very difficult because it's just hard watching someone you idolize just to find out that they're fallible, because you cooked up in your head that this person can't make mistakes or wouldn't make mistakes. I shouldn't say can't, wouldn't make mistakes. What I'm reminded of at the end of this documentary was that celebrities are people too. And the difference between a Cosby and some other person who's doing the same thing he's doing, but they're not doing it in the limelight, is just that, the notoriety. Even if you remove the victim stories and just play the recordings, the record, the video, you're going to hear the information hiding in plain sight. It's interesting because I kind of felt like at the end of the documentary that the comedy was his way of potentially hiding what he was doing, because you could always write it off. Oh, I'm just doing a bit. That was just a skit. I was just joking. But I felt like he took advantage of that platform because he was doing comedy, so he could joke about it. Because then even on his albums, it was part of a bit he was doing when he mentioned Spanish Fly and the whole ins and outs of it. The fact that he was saying it on the record during a comedy show is already hidden under the guise of, oh, he's just exaggerating. He's just joking. It's not serious. He's not really serious. But come to find out, there's more fact than there is fiction. As was noted in the documentary, his victim list grew as he grew. I mean, it was reading it on the screen and seeing where he said yes, that he would, he moved between consent and rejection and lived in that gray thanks to the Quaaludes. It was just disheartening to read that. I guess it just goes to show that we shouldn't necessarily idolize people or celebrities in that way, because we often forget that they are human just like everybody else. That means they're fallible. If we recognize that these individuals are human and don't put them up on a pedestal like that, then we can move away from the far-fetched attitude that, oh, this can't be true, or this person would never do that, and be more embracing, at least in the onset, to find out if allegations that are made are true. If you haven't taken a look at the documentary, I suggest you definitely do so. I would love to get your thoughts about it in the comments below. Until next time, be well. Peace.